All right, and we are live. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Gumtree of Liberty Live. I'm your host, Liberty Down Under. With me today, I've got my co-host, CentristOzzy from the main show, and joining us, we have Vitklim and Jack as well. And I thought today we'd break down in the light of the recent union protests we've seen in Melbourne today. I thought we'd break down what we've seen in the protests over the last few days. So we've had protests on Friday from construction union workers, and we had protests on Saturday, and then we had protests again today. So we've had protests for 3 of the last 4 days. So I thought we'd break down what we think with regard to those protests, and how do we see things going forward from here. So I think probably the biggest story we've had would be the woman who got sprayed on the protests on Saturday with the capsicum spray by the police. I think that's probably the biggest story that people who are outside of Australia have heard. I thought we might start with that story, maybe, if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'd say it's the most visible to the outside story, which, I mean, is good, I suppose, drawing attention to the situation at least.
Yeah, it was definitely the most graphic of the scenes to come out. There was a couple other incidents from that protest specifically, but I think when it came out that it was the 70-year-old lady that got basically choke slammed to the ground and then double pepper sprayed, I think it raised a few alarm bells with a few people. I still saw comments where people were like, "Oh, who cares? She shouldn't have been there anyway," and I couldn't believe it. Yeah, I'm hoping that's sort of the start of the wake-up call for people. So
I'm surprised you were surprised people were doing that. That's been a mainstay of every single Labor supporter so far. So I don't think choke slamming. No, I don't think choke slamming is probably a good way to phrase it either. He definitely shoved her. She definitely came off her feet. She definitely smacked her head on the concrete, and then the brave heroes maced her in the face. That's what happened.
Yeah.
All because they got in. She got in their way.
Yeah.
Admittedly, there have been stories going around that she's died. I can't find anything that to say that she has actually died. Like this, if she has nothing, no major newspaper has done anything on it. There's supposedly a story by the Daily Mail from the UK going around, but again, I haven't seen anything like that. I don't think any of us have heard anything about her dying.
Yeah. That Daily Mail article said nothing about her dying. That was just speculation. Yeah, that was just speculation from the person who shared the article. I used that article in the one that I wrote.
Well, do you want to break down what you've written and seen about the protest, then, Jack, being the person who lives in Melbourne?
Yeah. Well, basically, I spent the day just watching the footage come out, and I was bookmarking as much as I could because I knew that something was going to happen, because it always does with their kettling tactic, which is where the cops push forward in a line. They break the line and then they snatch someone, which, if you made it black and white and put them in Soviet uniforms, it kind of fits. But that's the tactic that they've chosen to go with, and the cops are sticking by it. So as far as I'm concerned, they are declaring themselves the enemy of the people. That's my opinion. But I've also been calling the cops terrorists, but that's me. Yeah. And I can by definition I can justify it too.
Can you though? As far as I know, terrorism is non-state act as far as I know.
No, terrorism in the most basic form is fear and intimidation it's fear and intimidation imposed upon a civilian population, generally a civilian population, to forward a political goal. The police are using fear and intimidation to put the Australian people in a state of fear in order to forward their whatever agenda they're pushing here. Because if logic is applied to the situation, there's no reason that the lockdowns, 1, should have gone this long, 2, should have even been there, 3, why is there a curfew, 4, why can't we go outside?
Yeah, all
Right.
that stuff agreed upon. I think it's just a difference between oppression and terrorism, but yeah, it's still basically the same thing.
Yeah,
Sure.
I tend to avoid using labels like fascism and Nazism and communism and terrorism just because of what it invokes. But to
That's the whole
make things
reason
clear
to use them.
to make things to help clarify things, terrorism is usually seen as being done by what analysts call non-state actors, which is to say groups that aren't backed by a state, or they aren't a state themselves. And the reason why people will see states as not being terrorists is because part of the definition of being a terrorist is an undermining of the state's monopoly on power. So it automatically, you've got there the assumption that the state has that monopoly on power and violence, and that is justified, and that terrorists are automatically bad because they are undermining that monopoly that the state has on power and on violence. So that's why people tend to associate terrorism with non-state actors as opposed to state actors like America.
I mean, that's fair.
And the UK.
That's fair. But that really does sound like the state's definition.
Yeah,
that's what that sounds like. Which is why I'm using the term terrorism, because it literally is. You could argue it's oppression, but we're not oppressed in Australia. We really aren't. Even right now, we really aren't. And the reason I chose terrorism over oppression is because it is not oppression. We're not oppressed. They're using emergency to implement authoritarian rules. Australia's gone from rule of law to rule by law. And as far as I'm concerned, the police are acting like terrorists.
I think you're fair to say with about the ruling by law, but if we bring it back to the topic around what's been happening at the moment, so rather than our definitions of what they're doing,
sure.
I think you're right in terms of they're acting in a way. I don't want to use the term bias because obviously. It has a connotation to it that I'm not trying to get across. But when you see how they've handled... Sorry. When you... Shush.
The power of mute.
Sorry, guys. What's that?
That's all good.
How they are handling the different protests that we've seen so far. So the initial dealing with, so we're talking about the Friday protest where I believe originally the protest was about the mandates for the vaccines, where the guys went out and put their tables across the road and all that.
The vaccine mandate hadn't come out at that time. The vaccine mandate came out on Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Friday protest was they were facing restrictions on having to they couldn't have breaks in tea rooms and stuff like that.
Okay.
The union gave in to the state, basically.
Yeah, I thought that.
So that protest
on Friday they had announced that they were going to make it. Maybe it wasn't the official announcement. I thought that was announced on Friday they were going to make it.
I don't think so. I think I'm pretty sure Friday happened because the union buckled to the state. And the tradies were like, yeah, this is not going on. We pay you to protect us and our working rights, and you failed to do so. So get stuff. Okay.
Yep. Cool.
As far as I'm aware, that's what it was.
Yes, because they were eating on the roads because they were protesting against being not allowed to eat in tea rooms.
Yep. But even then, still, the protest went off without riot squads and things like that rocking up. So, and then if you also go back far enough, within 2020, you can see where the BLM protest happened. The cops were
stood there with them. They kneeled, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yes, cops were kneeling with them. You've got there's a video that I was sharing today of the cops this time saying that protesting gets nowhere. It's stop doing it compared to last year when they were saying it's human rights.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It didn't really go anywhere either.
Yeah.
But that's not the point. People always make this point, what's the point of protesting? What's the point? It doesn't do anything. You're right, it doesn't do anything. But the point of protesting is to not, it's like, if the point of protesting was to convince the government to change their mind, why wouldn't you just sign a petition? Petitions don't work the same way that protesting doesn't work. Protesting is in an effort to get the people on your side. It's about people versus the government. It's not about convincing the government. We're not begging them to tell us to live our lives. We're saying, people who are for the state, come here and see it from this side of the fence. That's basically what I'm saying.
My point was merely that the BLM and other such protests, they weren't a threat to the state. They just weren't.
Whereas that is a fair assessment. Although I would say that it may be, but I think that they're just aligned with that side at this point, more so than that, because it was safe. It's politically acceptable. I guess.
Expedient. It's in line with their ideology. They have no real reason to oppose it.
No. And it's an American movement that really has no reason to be here. So it's sort of meaningless in a sense that it doesn't really hold the same weight that it holds in America. Which is why I think that they let them have their little protest, personally. Because
it's also of no threat to state power, whereas
no, of course,
in our situation it directly is.
Where I think the reason these protests are being reacted to so harshly is because not so much that it's a threat to state power, it's against the narrative. And you can tell this by the way that the media reports on the protests.
It's both. At this point, the narrative goes towards the same endpoint of the state accruing more and more power.
Of course.
So,
I mean, that's the end goal of the existence of the state. So, there's no real surprise there.
It's more like the natural trajectory. You can avoid it. It's just really difficult.
Yeah, it takes effort. It takes maintenance that Australia is not doing.
And hasn't done for a while, yeah.
If ever. But yeah. But I think that these protests are, because there's this, and it almost hits into conspiracy theory territory with all the people around the world, the leaders around the world using the Build Back Better thing and the World Economic Forum and their "you will own nothing and you will be happy" speech and all of this sort of stuff. It sort of it reeks of, in the most literal sense, conspiracy. Like it's just weird that every country around the world, every leader is doing the same thing, despite all the indications that what they're doing is wrong.
Well, it's the confluence of interests. That's the better way to put it. Because for globalists, people who have basically enough power and influence to thrive anywhere, it doesn't really matter for them in terms of what happens to the country. So why would they care?
No, that's exactly right. They can, and it's the same thing as the Californian migration to Texas, right?
Yeah.
They've destroyed their state, but they're the ones with the money that can leave to Texas to destroy Texas. So it's sort of the same thing.
Yeah, which is why the globalists are the prime target for such theories, because if there was anyone, they would be the first target for this.
Oh, of course. Of course, they would be the ones that would benefit the most from it.
Yeah, and you don't even need to go far for examples. Like Soros, he is famous for this stuff for a reason.
Well, he, talking about California, he donated $1 million to him in the last, 10 days of the election. So,
donated it
to Newsom. There was a double donation of $500,000 from George Soros. So that's fun.
But anyway, getting back to, so you go.
No, yeah. Well, at this point, it's with the American station. It's kind of hard to even view it as if it could change, because it might be just my personal opinion, but with the California station and with the election, it's kind of clear that it was fortified. Since we aren't allowed to say rigged, it's fortified. Yeah. I mean, they admitted as much, so,
I don't think so. I think what they did was I think the Republicans just didn't vote as per usual.
You just read the Time magazine article.
But that was about the federal election, not California.
Yeah, but with California, it's like it's a Democrat stronghold. There have been reports of ballot harvesting, all the other stuff. There have been reports of people who have voted before even showing up to the polls. So you don't need to go.
But how many of those then prove a trend? Like it could just be a couple, or she could just be making a story up. I just think that the Republicans just didn't show up. I just think they didn't care enough. And I think that the celebrity propaganda, the Democrat propaganda, all of that, the slandering of Larry Elder, all of this, like the LA Times called him the black face of white supremacy. Like,
yeah, I've seen it. Anyway, yeah, let's get back on topic.
I hate to interrupt, but we are meant to be talking about the Australian protest, but talking about propaganda. Talking about propaganda. Do you want to go through some of the worst tweets from today's protest?
There's been some absolute rippers. It is interesting to see that the apparently typically left-voting union workers are suddenly far-right extremists. That one.
My favorite part is the union leaders siding with the state. That's my favorite bit.
Yeah, you've really got the state, union leaders, and inner-city leftists fighting union workers who are being backed by the right. So therefore, the union workers are on the right, even though it's like I was saying, like I was tweeting one person today on Twitter, and they were basically saying, I'll try and pull the tweet up. Actually, it was just one of those really, really stupid ones from today. I think I've got it here. Yeah, I pulled it up right now for share, and I'll read it out for the people who are watching later on audio. So the tweet today was basically. The tweet from today is, were these protesters really union members though? Looks like a Liberal Party rent-a-crowd. and my response to that was basically, I can put my response up. My response is, you cannot truly comprehend the fact that being opposed to lockdowns is not inherently a right-wing thing. Welcome to the real world, where things don't fit into nice little boxes like you want them to. Because that's really what it's come down to for these protests today. People suddenly panic because they're seeing people on the left doing what people on the right are doing. So therefore, people on those left are actually on the right, even though it's possible to have bipartisan support for being anti-lockdown.
Yeah, the thing is, we've got to reframe. I've been trying to say this a bit on Twitter as well. We've got to reframe how we talk about this, because if we get into the left-right debate, that's what the left wants. The authoritarian left, I should say, not the left in general. The issue really is libertarianism versus authoritarianism. And that means that you can be left or you can be right and still agree on the same key principles of what's going on. And then that's where we've got to bridge that divide. That's the only way you're going to compete with what's going on.
Well, yeah, you're 100% correct, because the fight isn't left-right. The left-right paradigm doesn't mean anything anymore because it's irrelevant. It's the up-down axis. It's the authoritarian libertarian, if we want to use the political compass.
It doesn't mean anything in this situation, I'd say, because
sorry.
It doesn't mean anything in this situation, I'd say, because the left-right divide at this point is more along the lines of social issues and slightly financial issues. But this is just straight authoritarianism that doesn't benefit either side, which means that they can come together on this issue specifically.
It benefits the inner-city liberals.
Yeah, it does them, and who else? Like, the rest of the left is going to turn against them in this situation.
I think if they continue supporting the police brutality, I think that, yes, the left will turn, but I genuinely don't think that those who use the I Stand With Dan hashtag, I don't think they're going to have their mind changed. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Yeah, but
we've seen it. Sorry, you go.
But they're in the camp of authoritarian left. Like, you're not going to convince someone who's bought into the tribe. Like, the ones you want to try and convince are, which will be like your union workers, it'll be your blue collar, it'll be the guys and the girls who are typically left wing, but really aren't big fans of the government.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But we even saw Antifa types today calling for the riot police to be sent in to the protests. That's the point we're going at right now. Is the left will do anything they can to stop this?
That's because they're tankies.
Well, yeah.
They claim to be ANCOMs, but they're really just tankies. They don't care. They're just communists.
As all of the stupid anarchists in this section, because in any case, like if they want to get the redistribution or other shit that they want, they'll have to use the state. There's no other option, which means in the end they'll always be tankies.
Yeah. Their status wrapping themselves in a black flag. That's all it is.
Do we want to talk about PR guy for a second?
Oh, yeah.
Talk about the fun of them.
Yeah, why not?
I love
go for another loco.
Is he calling people traitors again? Or is she? Sorry.
Is it a she?
What's her name? Jess something? Daniel Andrews staffer, apparently.
Wait, when did that come out?
A couple of days ago, I saw. Let me try and find it.
Yeah, that was the
So
rumor.
she really is this PR guy then? If she's working for him.
We don't know, but we're not. It's just one.
There we go. I found my favorite tweet from PR guy from today, which I think is just one of the worst takes of the protest. There you go. So rise of the right. This is the QAnon far-right's January 6th siege moment in Australia. When the federal government addressed the threat of the rise of the far right in Australia, it is the single largest threat to our national security. So basically, a PR guy is saying that unions are far right.
Fucking hell, where do you find this?
Union workers are fascist. Union workers are far right. But that's where we are in Australia right now.
God, where do you find these people? Seriously.
This guy's the paid shill.
PR guy is something like 30,000 followers. He was, when we had the protests a few weeks ago, he was saying, if you're protesting, you are pro-COVID, you're a traitor to your country. If you know someone who's breaking the rules for COVID, call the police on them. Call Crime Stoppers. Call your police on your neighbors if you see them breaking the lockdowns. People were literally people who are tweeting at the police right now saying, this person broke COVID restrictions. Go find them. I saw one person who was saying they saw people I saw one person saying they saw kids playing basketball find their parents $1,000 each for playing basketball outside, and that was in Sydney, I think, like last month sometime.
It's mass onset mental illness, is what it is. It's hysterical mass onset mental illness.
I wouldn't go into mental illness.
It's just a tribal mindset. That's all it is. It's not an.
It's mass hysteria. It's exactly what it is.
Well, you got to remember, if you think you're right, then you're going to defend your point. Like if you get to the point, you get to the point where you start just believing it yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like it's you take away the critical thought.
It's cognitive dissonance is what it is.
You can't.
They get angry when they're told something that challenges their worldview.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this
we
is actually
we had someone today who was blocking you for when you challenged their worldview today, and then they blocked me for getting involved.
And they quote tweeted me saying that we should guillotine tyrants.
I don't advocate for violence.
The French approach, I see.
I'm all for the French.
I don't use of violence to protest. Like I'm more.
Yeah,
it's not violence, it's justice.
I'd say just don't forget what happened after the revolution. That's my point.
Yeah. But the fact that like he's going after you for challenging his worldview on this. And then when he went to your profile, and then he saw me, and then he saw that you were following me and someone else, and I don't remember who it was. Who was the other person
I'm not sure. I didn't see them. I didn't see the reply.
And he was like, "Oh, this is obviously he Jack is an idiot because he's following me and this other person." And they got involved, and I quote he took a screenshot of who Jack was following and then blocked Jack, and then posted the screenshot, and I then quote tweeted that saying, "Look, guys, I'm internet famous," and he blocked me for that. So people who will, like, if you challenge their worldview, they will block you. Like my stance on Twitter has been a no block policy, because it's like it's freedom of speech. Let I don't care what they say, and just ignore them, just mute them. Like I'm not a big fan of blocking people. I understand some people want to, but like I don't like doing it. But like the fact that he'll block someone just for being different.
I've been blocked by someone because I said that they were wrong. Literally, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Here's why, and they blocked me.
Yeah. People don't like having their worldview challenged. That's what I was thinking about that last person. People don't
Hilarious.
like their belief of people fitting into nice little boxes being challenged.
Yeah,
No.
but I love it. Just this tweet alone, you can break it down on so many levels. First of all, QAnon. How is that even relevant to Australia in any way? Unless you think
not.
unless you think it's a global conspiracy theory, which it's
Actually,
not.
hold on. I
to-
actually know where this came from. So there was, I'm not sure whether you guys saw the Four Corners episode, but they did a whole thing on this. There was a guy who is friends with Scott Morrison, who convinced him. So just basically seeded the idea of using the term ritual abuse in a parliamentary speech. I'm sure you heard the news freak out about this when it happened. So he used the term ritual abuse, which is something that QAnon uses quite frequently. So as a result, I think it was Louise Mulligan was the one that did the report. She basically had this story about this loser who trailed off onto 4chan, who got sucked into the QAnon thing. This guy's like 50 years old, right? So he just happened to be a friend of Scott Morrison, and just because Scott Morrison is the dumbest person in the country, was able to convince him to say this in a parliamentary speech, and therefore, via guilt by association, they claim that Scott Morrison is the QAnon prime minister. Like, it's pathetic. Like this guilt by association is one of the dumbest things you can possibly accuse someone of, and they did it in a publicly funded documentary.
I mean, admittedly, you and I in particular have seen people in Australia who are QAnon, who worship Scott Morrison and Trump. We had a few got into one of the group chats we were in a couple months ago. We had to deal with those, but we have seen Australian QAnon people, but they're nowhere near as big as people make them out to be. Like,
it's insignificant. QAnon is insignificant. Like, if we just treated them like the losers they are, nobody would care. But the media has this mindset, because QAnon is the favored buzzword now, that if you call anyone you don't like is associated with QAnon or the Proud Boys,
they need an
far
enemy,
right.
so.
Exactly. So it's us versus them. That's what it is. It's the us versus them mindset.
And also another thing, like you looking at him, you look at him saying that it's the far right. Well, let's see, the union workers who are traditionally voting Labour, who traditionally that's just general political situation. If they are now far right, well, who does that leave? That leaves the elites. That leaves the essentially upper class,
establishment left.
Yeah, essentially, which means it's such a nice, and also like the best thing about this is it leaves the union itself against them, which means that the bureaucracy, the institution itself is against the people who it's supposed to be representing, which, as is the case with all socialist type institutions, that always happens, more or less. Yeah.
Power corrupts, absolutely.
Yeah, what
It's
happened?
as simple as that.
All right, so
else?
we're going to talk about the protest today then.
Yes.
Sure.
Like a bit more
Break that
detail
down.
about what happened. So
That's probably the biggest one right now. Yeah.
yeah. So from what we've done, add in, if you've heard, the protests, I think it went for nearly 7 hours from the morning through and stayed relatively peaceful. I think there was one scuffle when the leader guy came out and had a chat.
John Setka.
Him, I think a bread basket or something got thrown at him. But then
It was a bread basket.
And then I think he said he was going to come back out, and then he said in an hour I'll be back out. And then in that time, he went on the 3AW radio program and called them violent extremists and right-wing nut jobs. So that's when it all kicked off, unfortunately. So we don't condone trashing the front of the building. I can understand. I can understand, but you definitely shouldn't be condoning it, because at the end of the day, you just gave the media what they wanted, which is the violent. They're only going to run those snippets, and then that's it. They're not going to show
Of course, but they don't care anymore. They're over the media portrayal. They're over it. Yeah. They don't care.
And at this point, and at this point, who the fuck cares what the media says? They lie in any case.
If protesting's about getting the people on board, then it's important.
Yeah, well, they have to get them on board through other means than just the media, because the media will lie in any case.
Yeah.
Like it's not a matter of how you behave. It's even if there was absolutely no violence, they still would portray those people as, being either far right or being morons who are against the mandate, who are pro-COVID, as someone said before. Like the media is going to frame the situation like this anyway.
Of course, I saw an article that said talking about the Brisbane protest. It was like one fight, and the media managed to get a hold of that information and printed it as with violent fights also breaking out in Brisbane.
But of course, the BLM protests in America, where they where you had whole stores being burnt down, that sort of stuff. That was mostly peaceful.
Yeah, it's nowhere near.
Yeah, but to be fair though, then that's why I criticised the BLM protests. Like, I was not a fan of the BLM protests because of what was going on with the rioting and the looting and stuff like that. So I'm not going to sit here now and defend people throwing glass bottles and putting because you've got to remember for the whole time. No, there was definitely glass, and the guys that were throwing it, there were other workers who were standing there defending it, going, guys, this is not what we want to do. This is not why we're here. So those people there were in the firing line. So you've got a couple of knob jockeys who were throwing glass bottles, trying to kick in the glass door, while the other guys were like, calm down, let's talk this through. If you want to, I can't condone doing that, because that's what I condone BLM for.
Yeah, but
there was violence on both sides. We've got to condemn both sides equally for violence. Yeah. We can't, be one-sided in that. Both sides had violence.
Here's the
different
thing,
extents,
though.
But there was violence on both sides.
Here's the thing, though. When it comes down to unequal enforcement, then it's kind of hard to say that you have a choice, because
yes, but this wasn't enforcement. This particular incident with the bottle on the front of the union thing, it wasn't enforcement. It wasn't involved with the cops. I didn't have a problem with that guy. I'm not aware of the exact station. So I didn't have a problem with the guy who tackled and knocked all those cops over after the cops broke the line and started tackling people and spraying them down and knocking the old lady over. Like, I didn't have a problem with that. The thing is if you want to send your message, smashing the front of the CFMEU when there were no cops and causing any issues or anything like that, that was just, it's not going to send the message you want it to send.
Did they damage anything other than the CFMEU?
No, they just smashed the front end of it.
Fine.
Oh, apparently someone kicked the dog.
No, I saw that video. Fuck that guy. I see. My thing about the protests in America, as opposed to here, is they targeted private business.
Yep.
Here, they only targeted the CFMEU because they didn't listen, because they chose the side of the state. I think when you refuse to listen to the people who pay you, who you're meant to represent, you get what you deserve. They probably shouldn't have done it optics-wise, but it's like the protests on Saturday. The police chose violence. They got it in kind.
And at least they limited damage to the actual target. So, that's something.
So I'm not saying that's a good thing optic-wise, but I think it was expected.
Like there was that private car parked outside of the CFMU building, and that was mostly unscathed, even though it was in direct firing line of the entrance.
Yeah, we know if that was the left protesting, they would have destroyed that car and many other things.
because who cares about private?
Yes.
By the way, this is a minor thing, but here's the fun link. Might have a look at that.
What is this one? Oh my god! It's Jacobin. That doesn't count. They're a parody magazine.
I mean,
they're not parody. They're just stupid.
No, they're socialists. They're fucking idiots, is what.
Yeah,
they're
a parody of themselves, but nothing else. So, still fucking funny.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
that's my favorite headline. Yeah, that's my favorite headline I've ever seen.
I'm going to try and find the actual article link and put that in the description for the podcast. Just
we don't literally. Well, Hitler did it, so like usually people who make that joke are a bit more subtle,
Yeah, it's a bit more implied than just outright. That's funny.
I also don't think there was any real comparison in terms of pandemic wise compared to now in Hitler. There's not a real comparison you can draw there anyway.
Yeah, I mean it's more of a joke anyway, but yeah, you just
no, it's a real article. I'll put the article.
I thought you guys would enjoy it.
No, that's really funny.
I can't sometimes with these people. I don't understand how they can argue that this is really the case.
I don't.
That's the article.
The guy that wrote that has some based articles though.
Like what?
Unfortunately, hold on. Unfortunately, Gavin Newsom is the future of the Democrats.
Okay,
that's hilarious. All right. 20 years ago, the Saudi government got away with the crime of the century.
You know what? That's actually not that bad.
No, this is what I'm saying. They're based as shit.
Yeah.
All right. So just read that first paragraph there. Contrary to claims about fascist vaccine mandates currently circulating on the right, the Nazis actually relaxed German vaccine mandates and hoped doing the same for people they conquered would kill them faster.
What?
I'm losing brain cells reading this.
Citation, please.
No,
I'm going to try and find that citation.
No,
I'll stop shit.
I can see the logic.
I'll try
I can see
that.
the logic. The issue with that is that they actually killed people. So your argument falls flat anyway. It's like, yeah, they relaxed mandates, so the consequence of that would be the death of people. Okay, but they also literally kill people. So
here's some more. The Supreme Court is a threat to democracy.
Oh God. Really?
Oh. Here's a pretty based one. The media was in love with Joe Biden until he tried to end the war.
Well, that's actually true. So
This is funny.
Like we don't count literal truth here. So
holy shit, they're calling out the ADL for being corrupt.
Who would have known?
PayPal and the ADL, a match made in censorship hell. What a good headline. I love that. That's awesome. Awesome. That was a shit take, but he's got some funny articles.
Back to... We've got a comment in the chat saying, you know who else drank water? Hitler.
Yeah, it's literally down to that level of argument.
That's literally what it is.
That's the point we're at right now. So that's why people like calling someone far right or a Nazi or Hitler is really becoming desensitized right now because it's being thrown around so often that it really has no meaning
for a
right
long
now.
time.
It's lost anyway for like the past 2 years at least. So
Yeah, at least.
yeah, it's just a matter of people who didn't pay attention to it before actually paying attention to it now, and them also not believing it.
It's been around since it's been common since at least 2016 with Trump.
Yeah, that's when it started.
I don't think it actually started off that soon. I think for the first like year or so, they were getting up to the Nazi level, and then it became just
no. They were on it from day one.
When was Charlottesburg?
Charlottesville.
What do you mean? Charlottesville was
2017.
Sorry.
Yeah, 17.
2017.
So it was from Trump onwards, at least. It's when it's common in America. I don't know.
They were calling the Gamergate people Nazis, so it's all the way back there. Everything leads back to fucking Gamergate.
Of course it does, because it was literally the first real cultural conflict where people didn't back down and actually made a fuss.
Yes, gamers rose up.
Gamers were oppressed first. We made it, guys.
The gamers chose their freedom. Don't censor our titty ladies.
Anyway, to bring it back to the protest.
That's too centrist.
I've just tagged you in a tweet. Can you bring that one up, Liberty? I tried to do it through mine, but it won't do it.
Give me one second. I just saw that right now. The one by Tax Guy, or
yeah. I think that's a perfect example. This is to do with because after today's protest, the Victorian government has decided that for the next 2 weeks they're going to shut down construction work sites completely, shut them all down. So,
all right. So I've got that tweet up now.
As Tax Guy in this particular one points out, let me get this right, they've shut down construction for 2 weeks because of ugly scenes involving far-wingers pretending to be workers. So why are we punishing the members if they weren't the protesters?
That's the same thing from before, is that they're actually paid. Is that they've actually paid LNP members out there protesting, claiming to be union workers.
Yeah, so they're gonna hurt the union workers by shutting down the work sites for 2 weeks. If they're either fake and then you let the unions work, or they are union workers and you're trying to punish the union workers.
Yeah, this is something that actually wasn't clear. The shutdown for 2 weeks, did that happen before or after the protest?
After the protest.
Oh,
it happened just after.
Yeah,
today.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's either can't get this story right.
Well, they don't care about consistency, so what else?
Yeah, consistency is very rare these days.
Yeah, because they just don't give a shit about it. Like if power is your only concern, then you will lie to get power.
But like even the fact that when it comes to this protest that the ACTU came out against CFMEU members is quite surprising to see.
Is that Sally McManus?
Sally McManus.
Yeah, no, she's a lame shill. That's why.
She's the secretary of the Australian Council of Trade Unions, which is the ACTU, and she was complaining about the protesters who are members of the CFMEU, which is a construction, forestry, maritime, mining, and engineer union. I'm pretty sure. I think I got that one correct. So she was coming out against the CFMEU protesters. So ACTU is the biggest union in Australia. CFMEU is definitely up there, though, I'd say.
God damn, do we have anyone who is not a shill?
No.
The CFMEU is part of the ACTU, am I correct, Jack?
Yes, sorry.
CFMEU, because the ACTU is all unions.
I'm not 100%. The Australian... Hold on.
I think the ACTU is where all unions are a part of.
It's a national trade union. So, yes, it would be a union of all of them, I believe.
Because that's our body. That's our body for the Australian unions in the international trade union group, whatever that was called. So I think so. She's coming down against people who are underneath her. So you've got the secretary of the CFMEU and secretary of the ACTU coming down against these workers again. So you've got people who most of these union leaders have office jobs. Not all of them are on the ground. So you've got again, you're basically these are basically the same as inner city lefties, people who don't work on the ground, in trades. I know we've got I think.
I sent you a tweet.
To me?
Yeah.
In DMs, or did you tag? Okay, there.
No, on Twitter. On Twitter.
From Sally, yeah, that's Sally's main tweet from today. I'll pull that one up.
Mm. Oh, but she has a thread.
Someone said in the chat that I bet they won't shut down Dan's project.
No, they definitely
right there. That'll keep going.
Of course it will. The way he had to shut down the railway crossing removal for his photo op. Had to let lockdowns out for that reason. Allegedly.
Yeah. There hasn't been much coverage.
I've got that tweet up now for you. So the ACTU condemns the violent attack on CFMEU Victoria Tasmania's branch office orchestrated by violent right-wing extremists and anti-vaccination activists. This violent attack on union property, which endangered union officials, staff, and the public, was reprehensible. Sorry, I'm really confused there about who was like. I don't understand where this is coming from. Again, she's calling her own union members right-wing extremists.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's another thing
union
for
workers.
You. Yeah, and here's another thing for you: the public. Well, did anyone in the public actually get hurt? Anyone who wasn't directly involved in this? Like, anyone? That's the thing. Since it was limited to just that building, and I didn't see any reports on anyone like who wasn't involved getting hurt, you can't really say that. Yeah.
The CFMEU also did a media release. I've just pulled it up. They have basically said that this crowd was heavily infiltrated by neo-Nazis and other right-wing extremist groups.
Are you kidding?
No. I'm reading this from their media release. And it's clear that a minority of those who participated were actual union members. So they're legit.
I want proof. That's what I want. I want proof.
Yeah, you're not going to
get it. Prove that this is true. If it's not, the union members should sue the CFMEU for defamation.
Oh, they should do that anyway.
They should. The members should 100% sue the CFMEU for defamation. Every single person that was there.
No. Wait for it. Why just defamation? What about the 2-week shutdown? I think that one's a bigger deal. Sue them for that. If you can.
Yeah, I just don't think there's legal grounds for that, but I'm pretty sure that would count as defamation. They're basically calling them Nazis.
Yeah, I just tagged. There's a group of lawyers that are on Twitter.
They're already on it.
The GMB. So I tagged them in it and just asked them whether they can, whether it's a defamation case or not. Because it's a pretty big thing to call someone a Nazi. Like to legitimately mean it too. Like to call you.
Can you send that one to me?
Yeah, I'll tag you in it. Oh, actually, hang on.
Fucking hell! I'm just reading through the hashtags a bit more.
There's apparently going to be a protest tomorrow at the headquarters again.
Yes, but the problem with that is that they're going to have the right police there. So the right police turned up at the end of today's protest, so they're going to be there waiting for tomorrow.
Apparently, they deployed tear gas.
Yes, that was being spread out. That was being spread out of the building at one point.
Yeah, but they did shoot rubber bullets. They took some lady's windscreen out as she was driving.
Apparently. Yeah, so we're already at that point.
They shot rubber bullets. Someone pulled a bullet out and was showing people the big grenade-looking things, and apparently it hit someone's windscreen. So,
by the way, if you want to find more stupid takes, just go to #TradyProtest. You'll find lots of them.
I'm sure there's lots of stupid takes out there.
I might pitch this one as well. just as a follow-up.
I'm
This is
going to
good.
have to bail, guys, but I'll leave you to it and I'll check back in tomorrow, see how it's all going.
No worries,
Right,
mate.
cheers.
No worries.
Right, thanks, guys. Yeah.
So yeah.
So we are a bit disorganized to the viewers still here. This was put together within a couple of hours, I think. So we haven't had that much time to prepare for today.
Got pushed back from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m.
We were meant to do our recorded episode 3 today, but we had stuff was changed around, so we didn't end up doing the recorded episode today. Instead of doing a live instead, and we'll do the recorded episode Wednesday, and then it'll come out that night as per usual on YouTube and all the podcasting apps.
Well, in any case, if we're running low on material, there's that link I posted way back at the very beginning. It's a 3-minute clip discussing the Pfizer vaccine trials, I believe. Might be interesting to review if there's nothing else. It's
Domestic violence. What?
Yeah, I pulled that one up now, so for the people so we can read it out to people. So isn't John Setka facing domestic violence charges? I did hear something about that. I can quickly do a search for that one now. But I did hear that he was up for domestic violence charges. It could just be a rumor.
See, I hate this sort of shit. This sort of shit is it's antithetical. And even if it is correct, it's completely antithetical to the discussion. This should never come up. It doesn't matter. It should be all focused on the fact that he is siding with the state over the people. His personal life is irrelevant, right? It's like all the people who were responding to Nicki Minaj with like, "Aren't you married to a sex offender?" Right? It's not relevant. It's deflection. It's fallacious, right? This shouldn't come up. It really shouldn't, because it deflects from the fact that there are actual criticisms to be had, criticisms which are overshadowed by personal drama.
Guys, I think I found an even stupider take. Have a look at this. So,
can you share that one to? Can you share it to this on video here?
Yeah, just give me, I'll just read it out because it's not that long. So
okay.
Apparently the construction union workers which are protesting, they need to be shut out of the essential worker group. So construction is no longer essential. Congratulations.
except for Dan's tunnel, but apart from that,
no, it's like if construction is no longer essential, then what is left? Like, what's next? Is food production going to be non-essential as well? I mean
my
whole
whole thing is, who decides what and what isn't essential? Every single person has something that is essential to them that is not essential to someone else.
Yeah, well, obviously, no
and
one
this
should,
is this is
if
the
you're going to
problem.
go for it.
Yeah, but this is the problem.
So I think I know why John Setka is taking such a pro-Labor government stance here. It's because he is up for domestic violence charges. So he's under pressure to resign from the CFMEU because of it. So he's using this probably to get brownie points. So I'll pull that one up now. So Leadfield was correct. He is up for domestic violence charges because by his wife.
Yeah, who's he trying to get brownie points with? Like
with the ACTU and the rest of the CFMEU to make sure he stays on. So if he toes the union line, he could be allowed to stay on if he takes such a vocal stance against these protesters.
Huh.
So this is from the end of August. Is that his wife Emma Walters is alleging domestic violence, which has left her fearing for her safety. So you can see that's a picture of the result of the violence there on her head. That large lump there from John Setka is what she's alleging. Which is definitely, I believe, innocent till proven guilty. But it is interesting to see that's an issue right here. I've just been told by someone in the chat to check PR Guy's Twitter because apparently they've posted something. So I'll check that one now.
Oh, let's see.
What a nightmare.
I will. Give me 2 seconds. It's about Lee Sales and the unions He's okay. This is basically along the lines of Lee Sales being hard right and not being. So for those who don't know, Lee Sales is a reporter at the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation or Commission, one of those two. State. It's taxpayer funded state media. So they are more leaning to the left because the Labor wants to increase their funding and the Liberals want to decrease their funding. So, of course, they're going to go for the people who want to give them the funding, which is the Labor. So Lee Sales is a 7:30 reporter and the host of the 7:30 report. And because she did criticize dear leader Dan Andrews, she's now considered to be conservative because of that one issue. So I'll pull that tweet up now for you guys.
I love that.
Because I can't stand people who are saying, like the Murdoch conspiracy. Apparently every media outlet in Australia is apparently somewhere on the right.
Yeah, bullshit. As far as I know, only Sky News Australia is like the only one.
Is right. Yes, and because it's Sky, which is our version of Fox. So here we Lee Sales has just interviewed Sally McManus on 7:30 report. In response to questions about vaccines, McManus told Sales that far-right groups orchestrated the attack on the CFMEU today. Lee Sales made no acknowledgement of that and asked no questions about the attack today.
Okay, but that doesn't even make sense. If it's a question about vaccines, then it's not a question about the attack. What?
No, so the attack today was about vaccine mandates. However, the problem that I have with this tweet is it's saying that Lee Sales didn't reply to the statement that it was being done by the far-right group, so therefore Lee Sales is supporting them. However, if Lee Sales was supporting the far-right groups, why have McManus on in the first place? If Lee Sales is supporting these far-right groups, why even have the union boss on to talk about it in the first place? It makes no sense.
That is a good point. I think that the Australian media has figured out that this right-wing conspiracy, right-wing extremist buzzwords gets clicks.
Yeah, well, it's literally just
honestly,
the right-wing is evil.
And honestly, Australians should look at weaponizing our defamation law against this sort of stuff, because this is we have some of the strictest defamation law in the world. And what we should be doing is there should be some kind of non-profit set up to fund defamation cases against people in the media calling protesters Nazis, far right, and whatever branding that they use. It should genuinely be weaponized against them, because they're not going to stop unless you make it financially or physically unviable for them to do it.
Yeah, it's actually not a bad idea.
So we do have defamation acts. I think just about every state or territory has defamation acts. Plus, we have the Racial Discrimination Act, RDA 1975, which is Commonwealth legislation that deals with hate crimes to racial and ethnic groups. If it could be seen as being offensive, there is the exceptions under Section 18D, but 18D usually isn't super effective in stopping accusations that fall under Section 18C. So 18D does allow for justifiable statements, but generally the courts tend to find that it's more of an 18C case than an 18D exemption. Because of course, if the exemptions can be broad, then 18C is basically useless. So 18D tends to be interpreted by the courts very narrowly, from what I can remember. I could be wrong, but it tends to be more of a narrow approach to 18D, but compared to 18C.
By the way, I've been thinking about something. We have religious discrimination laws, right? And this might be more of a broader point, but I always wondered how well is religion defined in those? Because if it comes down to philosophical belief in general, which it might, some definitions do allow for that, then you could go for my religion is not taking the vaccine or not being forced into taking the vaccine. It's always
you need to say if you're, what would you consider yourself politically?
Conservative, I guess. I don't know.
Conservative? Okay. So that's a little bit harder. Where because I border on anarchist, it's sort of like coercion and consent is kind of a part of the ideology.
I mean, if it's just
for
social
them,
beliefs, yeah.
Hold on. So,
Yeah.
so if they are coercing me to do something that I don't want, or else they punish me for something that I refuse to consent to, that's political persecution. That's kind of illegal.
I hate to break it to you, but that won't work. That won't stand up because there are calls right now by experts in the USA to rigorously examine every single religious exemption.
Religious exemption,
of course,
for the vaccines and any other exemption, but especially religious exemptions for vaccine mandates. So it's going to become increasingly difficult to get away with using any exemption for anything in the future. From what I'm seeing, we're already seeing the courts try to generally find in favor of anti-discrimination legislation over, say, religious freedom or political freedom. For example,
that expert was a Columbia professor, so that means nothing. This person is a director of bioethics. Like, who the fuck is this guy? Fuck this dickhead.
Well, but isn't discrimination on religious grounds still discrimination? No.
Yes, it is. There are 5 categories of discrimination that qualify someone for asylum. And let's see if I can get these off the top of my head. Political persecution, religious, caste, nationality, and sexuality, I believe they are. I believe that's the 5 cases for asylum based on persecution. So if any of those reasons validate you to refuse the vaccine, then they can't discriminate lest they breach international law. But I don't think the Australian government cares anymore.
International law, yes, but I was more curious within the bounds of our own legislation.
There's no protection for us.
Yeah, fuck. Okay.
No, there is no protection. It's all implied.
Implied.
How do you think that democracy died so quickly?
So it's implied by common law. So the way it works in Australia is that common law is seen to give you certain freedoms unless there's statute to the contrary. I actually spoke about this on the podcast yesterday with Jerry and CD McRae, where we looked a bit into Australia's laws. And there's an early court case from 1908, which is 7 years after Federation and 5 years after the Judiciary Act, so 5 years after the creation of the High Court of Australia. And very basically, it was a statement by O'Connor who helped write the Constitution, no less. And he basically said that you have the common law right to freedom of travel. So you can, as an Australian citizen, you can enter into and leave Australia unless there's a law to the contrary. So, but that's as early as 1908, and you've got I'll try and find the case, but as early as 1908, you've basically got law saying that, you know.
So it's the French model. You have the rights until the government says you don't. Yeah.
But he's basing that on existing common law. So if there's already common law, which is court law that we inherited from England, if there's common law on it, you get the right. If there's no common law on that, then there is no right. So what
I want to know is why we're inheriting laws from a different country.
Because we were, as a colony of the UK, their laws transitioned over to us and then we kept them once we got federation.
Yeah, no, that was clear.
Because we have the
sounds like a bad plan.
We have the same basic legal system. Yeah, so I found the case. It's Potter and Minahan, which is a 1908 case. Yeah, so the Australian citizens can come and go as they please, unless there is legislation in the Australian community to the contrary. So basically, yeah, you have the right to freedom of travel unless the government says you don't have it, in which case you don't have it.
So, yeah, you don't have it, is basically what that's saying.
Yes, basically it's saying you don't have it. You've got to argue that you do have it, rather than arguing that you've got to argue in court that it does actually exist, even though the laws say you don't have it. You've got to go to court and
all you have to do is quote the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which says that is a human right that you shouldn't breach. Even though the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights isn't legally binding to anyone, it's a guideline for what your human rights in a country should be. Nine of which the Australian government are currently breaching.
I hate to break it, but the UN is also, Sorry.
Yeah, I went over this a bit yesterday. International law is not binding in Australia whatsoever. International law is only useful as guidelines when there's a gap in the law that is not covered by common law or statute law, which is Parliament law. So unless there is nothing by common law or statute law, international law is useless in Australia. In America, the Senate ratifies treaties. It's a bit more influential there, but in Australia, it's basically useless. It's basically nothing. It's nothing more than a statement of ideals, is what it is in Australia
democracy.
Right
now. We have a democracy.
Yeah, as you described, it's if there is a gap in the law. I remember from last stream. But the problem with the UN's outlined human rights is that they also have the clause of unless the government says you don't. Like, the
ICC Article 12.
The UDHR is not a binding contract. It's just something that the UN and all the member states agreed upon that is what human rights should be in a country. Most countries of which do not follow it.
Yeah.
So it's ultimately useless, but I like to use it because it is an easy, reputable source of information for people who clearly don't understand what rights are.
And it tends to be useful in arguments against globalists. So if you're fighting someone who is more globalist in mindset, using the UDHR is useful because they tend to uphold those principles. So more liberal, globalist-minded people. Someone who's passionate about human rights law myself, it has been so. As someone who's passionate with regards to human rights law, it can be quite influential depending on who you're debating. But yeah, it can be useful in debates with people, but less so in a court of law, unless you're referring to international courts of law, in which case it is. But that's all voluntary and hard to enforce. It's a real grey area, really good grey area, international law.
The UN is a globalist institution anyway, and which is why I believe they had the mention of unless the government says you don't. It's I have to find the exact part where it essentially implies that, but yeah.
That's Article 12 of the ICCPR, which says that it can be limited for in the case of any. I think the quote is emergency. I'll try and pull it up now from my notes from yesterday's live stream. There we go. So the Article 12.3 of the ICCPR allows for restrictions on freedoms like freedoms of movement, for example, provided that it is being done in the name of national security, public order, public health or morals, or to protect the rights and freedoms of others, provided that these are, quote, reasonably necessary and proportionate. Which they aren't, but that's beside the point. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else to cover from today's protests? Anything else we've missed?
I don't think we missed anything.
Do we want to talk a bit about the Saturday protests? Because we haven't covered those much. The protests from Saturday, aside from the woman who got sprayed with capsicum spray, which is I think the biggest story from that one. But I guess that depends on where you were. So Melbourne was probably the most violent place. Sydney, they cracked down really hard.
Sydney all but failed.
Yeah, there was nothing there because of the police. Well, there's already 800 soldiers that are deployed right now to help with the vaccine rollout. Brisbane was just at that one fight. I heard there were around 2,000 nurses there. I haven't verified that. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's a claim that there were around 2,000 nurses that turned up to that protest. There are claims. Jerry, who went yesterday, who went on Saturday, said yesterday in the live stream that you could have that there were possibly up to 60,000 people there. Again, I haven't heard anything to verify that or say otherwise.
60,000.
Yes.
Fucking hell.
So good numbers.
Yeah. Again, I haven't seen anything to verify or disprove that. I haven't gone digging, obviously, but So I tend to avoid making statements like that just because we don't know how verifiable that is. We know.
Just say allegedly. Just say allegedly before everything,
allegedly.
and then you'll be fine.
Yeah, allegedly is my favorite word right now because I use it a lot. Allegedly, this is the case.
Or you attribute it to someone else according to this person who said it.
Yes,
blame
them.
Then you can shift the defamation to them, not you.
Well, I think if that's everything, then is there anything you guys want to plug it all from yourselves? Anything you guys want to promote?
Well, yeah, that's the video I posted at the very beginning. If you have some spare time, might as well go over it. It's a 3 minute to 4 minute clip out of a live stream, which would be
saving that one now.
Interesting.
I will post that in the link and with the timestamp when I upload the live stream. And also
timestamp is included in the link, I believe. I copied
Yes, timestamp is for 2022. I've got that one up right now. Jack, your thing's playing through the audio.
What is?
I don't hear anything.
Wait,
nothing's playing.
Never mind. I think
yeah, that's
audio problems on my end. My bad. The audio problems on my end. So I think that's. I'll put that link for that one in the description.
Yeah.
Anything you want to plug, Jack?
Yeah. Plug my podcast. I put the link in the chat. Yeah.
Which is kind of part of our network. Kind of isn't. We don't know yet. It's
yeah. I'm very inconsistent with it. It's called Jacked In Podcast.
It's kind of part of the Aussie Liberty Network, but it kind of isn't.
It's kind of my own thing. We'll figure it out later. Yeah, but we're talking about Bin Laden, how Bin Laden liked anime and shit. So
it was you and American anarchist too.
Yes. We're talking about the life of Bin Laden before 9/11 and then after, and how he liked anime and body pillows, and Final Fantasy VII was his favorite game. Go watch it.
I'll try and if I remember, I'll link that one in the description as well. Other than that, we have with regards to upcoming content for the Gumtree, we've got podcasts which will be coming out Wednesday. So Wednesday night will be coming out. We'll have a podcast done with myself, Jack, Jerry, Centrist, and Rattlesnake talking about the Australian political parties. That should come out Wednesday night, hopefully. Fingers crossed if recording all goes to plan. There will be a podcast coming out in a couple of hours from now, which will be the live stream, the audio version of the live stream from yesterday. Then next weekend we've got two live streams coming up. We've got a live stream with myself and some Brits talking about the life with COVID over there in the UK, and then following that we have that'll be 8 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, and then at 10 a.m. At 10 a.m. we've then got another podcast. I've got a few Americans coming on with a couple of us talking about faith and libertarianism, with Christianity. He's talking about more of a biblical approach there. It's not going to be recurring content. A few of us here are Christian. We want to talk about that just because a lot of us are passionate about that. That's the upcoming content. We don't have a plan for episode 4 yet for Gumtree, but that's the stuff from this week. Plus, we should have another episode of Australian Economics, episode 2, coming out as well sometime this week. Hopefully, if Aussie and Cap and Arabian Pleb get that recorded in time. Other than that, that's all from us. I will have our Twitters linked in the bio below for myself, Jack, Vitklim, and Centrist. That'll all be linked in the description to the YouTube and Spotify and everything else. The podcast is coming out slowly on Spotify and the other podcatchers. I think it's out on Spotify. Apple's having problems, so that should be out next week on Apple, hopefully. I'm still waiting for them to verify it. It could take up to 18 business days, they said. So that's fun.
Do you use
Anchor? My mic being shipped to. I don't know. We're using Podbean. Anchor is playing up for us, so we're using Podbean. I don't know, but yeah, that's all from us for tonight. Anyway,
yeah, was fun talking to you guys.
If there's anything major from the next lot of process, which is tomorrow, we'll probably do a live stream on that as well.
We'll see. Maybe nothing will happen.
Yes.
Maybe we'll see Tradie beat the shit out of cops. Maybe. We'll see.